The Seattle Seahawks proved everyone right and actually won the Super Bowl, and the New England Patriots fell short. We'll talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's a fact. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On NFL. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the #1 podcast network for you to listen to your podcast. Listen, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. I'm here with Kevin Oestrechier here today. Julian Council normally here on Monday, but my man Oestrechier is sitting in, and we're going to navigate you through I usually say the National Football League, but this is all about the big game, the Super Bowl. So we'll start off talking about Eminem wins his first one. That is Mike McDonald wins his first Super Bowl as my man Kenneth Walker shines and wins the MVP. The second segment will be mostly about the biggest moment of the game and how this game transpired to end up the way that it did. And then last, what's ahead for both teams, and then a tribute to a legend. Kevin Oestrechier, we were talking about this game prior to us recording. Were you surprised? I was not bored. I love a good 2-1 baseball game. So I was not bored with the defense. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super happy for the Seahawks, super happy for Mike McDonald. Obviously, it's a Ravens guy, and him coming from Baltimore to go do that. It was definitely a little bit of a slow game in the first half, and I really thought that Jason Myers was on his way to win that MVP based off all those field goals. But second half definitely opened some things up, and I know we're focusing more on the Seahawks in this segment. We'll get to the Patriots a little bit later, but I thought that Seattle just had the Patriots number from the jump, and even when they weren't converting their drives into touchdowns and kicking field goals, just felt like the Patriots were never really in the game. I think that's probably has a lot to do with a lot of different things, the preparation on the Seahawks side, the execution on the Seahawks side. But, Seattle fans get to celebrate, and rightfully so. I mean, it was an awesome win for them, and I'm super happy for Seattle and the Seahawks.
Yeah, we'll talk about what it means from an organic standpoint in terms of the macro value of all of this, like what it means moving forward. We'll get to that in segment 3. But as far as this game is concerned, they really dialed in. I said a few things, and I'll set this up for our fans. I said this, that the biggest matchup was, first of all, I said the Seahawks had the best defense in the league about 6 weeks ago with Matt Williamson. I think Matt thought it was Houston. And I said the reason why the Seahawks were good and better than everyone else because they got an abnormal amount of pressure up the middle. And with their secondary being the other strength, that pressure up the middle would then force quarterbacks to only play half of the field. And it seemed like that had a lot to do with it. It seemed like Drake Maye was running for his life. Seattle got to him and did what they were supposed to do. I call him Eminem, my man Mike McDonald, and he's a champion now, and he's going to be one of the guys that you look to that folks say he's won this championship. So we're going to hear from Corbin Smith right there, live, to let you know how he feels about the Seattle Seahawks winning their second Super Bowl trophy.
For the second time in franchise history, the Seahawks are Super Bowl champions. 29-14 victory over the New England Patriots, and it was all about the defense. Held the Patriots to 0 points for the first 3 quarters. Drake Maye sacked 6 times, 3 turnovers, a strip sack from Derek Hall, an interception from Julian Love, as well as a strip sack that was overturned to an interception from Devin Witherspoon, hitting Drake Maye, that Uchenna Nwosu returned for 6 points to all but seal the victory. Second Lombardi trophy for the Seahawks, who didn't play great on offense, but they made enough plays. 135 rushing yards from Ken Walker. Sam Darnold overcame a uncharacteristically inaccurate game late to throw a 16-yard touchdown to A.J. Barner that put Seattle up 19-0 in the fourth quarter, finished the game with over 200 passing yards, and most importantly, no turnovers. So Seattle did more than enough with a suffocating defense that looked like they were going to threaten to pitch a shutout. Didn't quite get that done, giving up a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but still utterly dominant start to finish. And fans of the Pacific Northwest can get fired up. The Lombardi coming back to Seattle.
Absolutely amazing performance by that defense. I expected them to play well, and I will go on record. I said that people were giving the New England Patriots too much grief for not scoring enough in Denver where there was a blizzard. But it seems like folks were able to see through that, and they were able to say, look, the Seattle defense, based on the matchups, was still going to be a huge, huge problem for those New England Patriots.
Yeah, and there were a lot of stats that kind of backed up some of the, I guess you could call them, struggles the Patriots had getting to the Super Bowl, even though they made it there, with Drake Maye in terms of the sacks he was taking and some of the turnovers. Those were very well documented over the course of the last couple of weeks leading up to this game. But look, they went through it. There were a lot of questions also about New England and their schedule over the course of the season. And look, you play who you play, right? Like you can't change that.
And it's hard to win 13 games in the National Football League and people say you had a bad schedule. This is the NFL. This ain't the Mountain West.
100%. And so I think with all that factored in, like, I'm not trying to take away anything from New England and how they got there. But at the same time, you look at Seattle and, them having to go through the Rams 3 times this season and the 49ers who were great this year. And, those teams, I do think the level of competition these two teams played were different. And Seattle, I think, was forged in that. And I think that while New England found a lot of good stuff, it was a matchup difference for a lot of different reasons. And it just felt like, again, the Seahawks were prepared, particularly on defense, for everything the Patriots wanted to do. The Patriots O-line, Will Campbell had a rough go of things, and other guys where Seattle was just overpowering guys. Drake Maye was running into sacks. He was missing guys. And, it's not like Sam Darnold played a perfect game here, but the Seattle defense was just so overwhelming, this New England offense, that it was a lot of like, when Matt Collins caught that touchdown, no one thought the Patriots were making a comeback. It was too little too late at that point. Seattle, it was domination all the way around. It was really impressive.
And sometimes things just happen. The ball's going to beat you in NFL. Nick Cattles is going to give his spill on what he believes happened in this game from Locked On Patriots. We're going to do that at the top of segment 2 here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Listen, man, the winter games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches start slow and somehow gets intense and fast. Speed skating races decided by inches. All of those things, man. At FanDuel, you'll be able to take advantage of it while these winter games are going on. So the winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, we're moving and grooving here with my man Kevin Oestrechier. Look, we can't discount the fact that the New England Patriots had a great year. A lot of people are going to look at the game and go, oh, it was a dud, it was this. No, what it was it was a masterclass on matchups. Josh McDaniel has been through this over and over again. So the fact that they were not able to ever get anything going and sustain anything, to me, is more of a credit to the Seahawks than it is a demerit to the Patriots.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots had a great year. I'm definitely not trying to take anything away from what they did this season, but sometimes you just run into a team that's playing lights out football. And, after seeing what the Seahawks did to the 49ers and were able, they got over the Rams thing and they got to the Super Bowl, like you could tell that like you would have to play a pretty perfect game to beat that Seattle team with the physicality they were playing with on defense, with how that offense was moving around and doing their thing. and they just weren't able to do that on Sunday for the Super Bowl. And again, like, the Patriots should be proud of what they did this year, but, you know, it kind of goes with the territory of, like, you know, it's disappointing for them, for New England and for the Patriots organization, that they weren't able to win the Super Bowl. And I think that you can kind of just chalk it up to, like, Drake Maye looked like a year 2 quarterback.
Yeah, man.
He looked young, which he is. He looked like a year 2 quarterback, which he is. He looked inexperienced, which he is. So the fact they even got there in the first place is even more impressive. The year that Drake Maye had was even more impressive, knowing all that stuff and him taking the league by storm. But, you know, sometimes, like, experience does win out and other things went out. I'm sure Sam Darnold was motivated after what happened in the playoffs last year with the Vikings and him getting that Super Bowl trophy, and, you know, guys playing for each other. Mike McDonald having the AFC Championship from Baltimore in the back of his mind and wanting to finish the job this time. And I'm not saying the Patriots didn't have that motivation too, but there just comes a point where, like, you know, with experience, it matters. And you see sometimes these young quarterbacks be able to do that, but sometimes they can't, and that's okay. But I'm not taking anything away from what Drake Maye and this Patriots team did this season. It was just a rough game today or tonight on Sunday.
Yeah, and you know what caught up to him? What caught up to him was the fact that their offense. There's been some teams that have won Super Bowls when they did not have elite offensive line.
Yeah,
but there's never been a team that has won a Super Bowl when the offensive line has actually been the weakness of that team. We saw, look, maybe if Joe Burrow has another half a second, he catches Jamar Chase down the sideline because Jalen Ramsey slipped, and Cincinnati is the only team to win with an offensive line that is below average. It finally caught up with the Patriots, and even their first-round pick, Will Campbell, he showed that he has a lot of work to do, and that's why a lot of people thought that he was going to be a guard as opposed to a tackle when he got to the NFL, because he absolutely struggled. But I do believe that the biggest part of the issue for the Patriots was they could not stop that penetration in the middle of the defense, whether it was straight up or on stunts. And then that causes the quarterback to have to only play half of the field because he bails out. And it's easy to cover when you have great teams. Locked On Patriots, he's going to let you know just how upset he is.
Just absolutely brutal. Just absolutely brutal. The offensive line was punished from the very beginning of this Super Bowl. Drake Maye was sped up. He missed a number of throws that were there, and they just didn't have it. Seattle's defense was dominant throughout most of this game. Tip of the cap to them. Offensively, Patriots couldn't do anything. Defense showed up. Defense played pretty well, but it wasn't enough. Man, it's a very, very tough end to a great run. We're going to talk all about it. Locked On Patriots in the live postgame.
My man Nick Cattles, man, he just letting you know, as he has all year long, the raw, straight up feeling disappointing. Offense could not get going. The Patriots defense did enough to win early, but then even after a while, they started to fold a little bit. I want to give a shout out to Kenneth Walker, because all year him along with Zach Charbonnet, they were a 1-2 duo. Sometimes you have a 1-2 duo, people think that your strength is the fact that there's a 1-2 duo. Sometimes it's the fact that both the 1 and the 2 are very good players. And Kenneth was able to, even with Charbonnet not being there, it was a way for him to go out and say, you know what, I can be a number 1. I can do this by myself. It was just the strength that guy was just that good. But he's the MVP of the game, man. And I thought that he was going to be a huge, huge part of what happened, and he's about to be a free agent.
You know, it couldn't have come at a better time. It could not have come at a better time. And look, I mean, I thought it was really impressive, and New England just had no answer for it. But the way Kenneth Walker was able to bounce outside on all these plays, and
best
100%, yeah. Like, there were players in the Patriots who stepped up. Christian Gonzalez definitely being one of them, but Kenneth Walker just was a man possessed in this game. Would have had a touchdown if there wasn't that holding call at the end of that game. He would have been 170 in a score or something after that. So he was dominant the whole game. Again, bouncing it outside. He was able to, be physical, run through guys, and that was a really big part, especially with JSN. He didn't play this full game. So they needed a guy to step up, and, guys stepped up in spurts, with Barner and whatnot, and Cooper Kupp coming up with some big catches. But Kenneth Walker was a beast out there on that football field. And yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a worry for me when Charbonnet went down, because I was wondering, all right, is Kenneth Walker, because he and Charbonnet work together in tandem so well together. And so I thought, all right, Charbonnet is a nice compliment. What can Kenneth Walker do in more of a bell cow role? And yeah, I mean, I know the whole thing about running backs and not wanting to pay him money and whatnot, but the team's going to have to pay Kenneth Walker some big-time money this offseason because he got hot at the right time.
Somebody's going to have to give him some money, and I think it's probably going to be Seattle because, man, he has a lot of value, and he was a difference maker. I thought that when Seattle's offense and New England's defense was on the field, the two best players were Gonzo and JSN. Kenneth Walker said, hold my beer. Wait a minute. I might be one of those two. We're going to talk about what's ahead for both teams, including some breaking news that my man Kevin Oestrechier basically told me while we were beginning this broadcast of Locked On Jaguars. And by this time, you all know it, but we'll discuss it. Seems like Clint Kubiak is going to confirm where he's going. And we'll talk about that and much more here in just a second on Locked On NFL. All right, man. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Indeed Talent Solutions. Listen, if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Listen to this. Hiring. Indeed is all you need, bro. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. It ain't about getting candidates in volume. It's about getting the right people. And that's what Indeed can absolutely do for you. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. Use Indeed sponsored jobs. Listen, anyone who listens to this show gets a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Third and final segment with my main man, Kevin Oestrechier of Locked On Ravens. You guys who are everydayers here, I know how much you appreciate the network, and we appreciate you. We don't take you for granted. If you want a little bit more, though, click down in the description for your favorite podcast, whether that be Locked On Ravens, Locked On Jaguars, or here on Locked On NFL. Join the Everydayers Club for as little as $5. Guess what happens? You get access to our merchandise and you get ad-free shows on our audio platforms, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you tap in to that location. Let's get to what is ahead for both teams. First and foremost, I'm going to play a little clip from the madman Tyler Roden, who's going to be here on Locked On NFL first thing in the morning to give you a double dose of espresso to wake you right on up. And this is the voice that you're going to hear. I disagree with him a little bit on this, but let's see what he says about this game tonight.
The Patriots were finally exposed for the frauds that they have been all season long. They lose to the Seattle Seahawks. Congratulations to the Seahawks. I mean, what a dominant defensive performance. Absolutely fantastic. And Kenneth Walker running all over the New England Patriots defense, did not see that coming. But realistically, I can't help but think back to, New England's schedule throughout the season, the easiest schedule in the NFL by winning percentage. They get to play the Chargers with zero offensive line. Then they get to play the Houston Texans, and C.J. Stroud throws the game away the whole time. Then they get the Broncos, and they don't even have their starting quarterback. Like, this was a true Mickey Mouse run for the New England Patriots. And I think if there's any team looking at them right now who's going to regress mightily next year, the Patriots have to be at the top of the list. Now, Seattle, I don't know if they're going to be able to repeat because dominant defenses are hard to do multiple years in a row, but they're certainly going to be a good football team next year. So not the best Super Bowl, not super entertaining, but we kind of all knew that New England were frauds, and to see them exposed on this big of a level kind of confirms it.
Yeah, so to me, there was 31 teams exposed this year. There's always only one champion, and I love Tyler to death, but I absolutely disagree with him on this. You don't get to the Super Bowl by accident. It's just too difficult. I don't care about Bo Nix being out. don't care about CJ Stroud and his issues. The thing is okay, they did not go through this gauntlet to get to the Super Bowl, but they got there. And how can you say after a year where they went 4-13 and then make it to the Super Bowl with a quarterback in year 2 and an offensive line that is still young and a whole bunch of young parts and the first year for Mike Vrabel, how can you say that, yeah, they're going to regress? I don't get it. I think that's a little bit of that's Mike Vrabel's team. And Mike Vrabel used to coach the Titans. And oh, by the way, Tyler actually picked the Patriots to win the game. So it's not a call out, but it's just for me saying, I don't know if you make it to the Super Bowl that you're exposed as frauds because of your schedule. And give me a second here, Kev, because when I watch college football, I have seen teams like Florida State and Clemson when people say, well, they had it easy because they did not go through the SEC. And then they win the national championship against an SEC team. And then people say, well, that other team was beat up all year because they played all of these tough games and they only had one game to play. And then when you get to the championship and the team that's from the conference that doesn't have a tough schedule and they lose, people say stuff like this, that they were exposed. So exposed is a rough word to me because anybody that loses to the team that wins the championship usually gets exposed.
Well, I want to more so hit on, the part, and I've had this conversation with you, Wig, I know, but, there's going to be a lot of this talk as well at the Patriots. When the Commanders made the NFC Championship game last season with Jaden Daniels in his rookie season, that there was a lot of conversation about the Commanders and the expectations that came with that. And to me, when you have these young rookie second-year quarterbacks that, make it very far, make it to the Super Bowl or whatnot and don't win, the actual definition of regression, which would be, moving backwards or, for the Drake Maye, not making the Super Bowl next year, it's probably pretty likely that the Patriots, it's not impossible they make it back. But, what do we see with guys like Joe Burrow? He made it once and hasn't sniffed it since. Like, it's never a guarantee that once you get there, you're going to go there again. But I think that, to me, the conversation around young quarterbacks and not getting there again the next season, I don't think it's a fair expectation to put on those guys that, okay, now that you've made that benchmark of your career so young, you have to get there or around there every single season or else you've regressed. And that, to me, is not fair or true because there are going to be a lot of teams in the AFC that are going to be competing for that Super Bowl spot next season. And, I could go on and on about those teams. The Patriots are going to be one of them. But I think that, again, I'm just chalking this up to I'm not going to take away what the Patriots did this season, but the Seahawks were clearly the better team. And, there's no doubt about that. And some of the things that we saw in terms of, the exposed thing, I would more so say some of the trends that we saw throughout the playoffs continued to be trends. Like I talked about with, Drake Maye and the sacks and the turnovers, that stuff that continued here in this game against the Seahawks. That was something that the Patriots could not, I guess, rewrite the script on. But I do think that, while it's not necessarily guaranteed that the Patriots are going to get back to the Super Bowl next season, again, it is certainly possible. I feel like the conversation surrounding these young quarterbacks, I went through with Lamar in Baltimore, and I'm still going through with Lamar in Baltimore. It's all the things with these guys getting very far or having great years, taking the league by storm, getting to a certain spot, whether it be great season. This team had the 4th pick last year in the draft, the Patriots, and now they're in the Super Bowl. It's that type of jump to where you can't just look, if teams were going to continue to progress every single season in terms of the standings, we'd have 30 Super Bowl champions every single season because no one would regress. There's one Super Bowl champion every single season. And the conversation with Jaden and how it happened, that was kind of a wash because that whole team was injured, including Jaden Daniels. So we never really got to see that. But I just don't want the conversation to turn into, look at Drake Maye in this terrible game he had. Yeah, Drake Maye wasn't great in this game. We can all admit that. We can all say that. We're not telling any lies there. But he had a great season. The Patriots had a great year. And, I'm looking forward to how they can continue to improve this team because Drake Maye is still on his rookie deal. I think the Patriots can be aggressive with that, pull up their weaknesses, and hopefully make a run for their sake next year as well.
The difference between them and Washington is Washington had the oldest team in the league, and they got older, and they thought they were where they weren't supposed to be. Well, they thought they were in a place that was. They thought they were better than they were, and they weren't. And they thought they were closer, and they weren't. The difference with the Patriots is they just clearly had a dominant defense, one of the 5 best defenses in the league. And what they actually need is to improve the offensive line and get a number 1 wide receiver. That's not that hard, bro, in one off season when that's all you need to do. They have a quarterback in his second year that made it to the Super Bowl. And when you say they've been exposed, you got to show me Justin Herbert. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been there yet, and I cover the Jaguars. Lamar, you cover the Ravens. He ain't been there yet. Joe Burrow got there and ain't been back. Mahomes didn't make the playoffs this year. You're setting this up to almost be unfair to them to say, okay, if he doesn't make it back, they were exposed or whatever. And that's not what Tyler said. But I'm just I push back on the fact that they were exposed. They beat everybody who was in front of them. They didn't make the schedule. They won the games they had to win to get to the Super Bowl. And they didn't give up a touchdown in the first half. They're pretty close. That's all I'm saying. Now, sometimes in this business, you see people talk about Hall of Famers that didn't make it, Hall of Fame voting that was wrong, and we forget about history. I'm not going to forget about it, so pardon me for a minute as I express my condolences to the families of Sonny Jurgensen. A lot of people may not know who he is. I'll tell you who he is to me. When I started watching the Washington franchise, they weren't the Commanders back then, but Sonny Jurgensen was the quarterback, and Billy Kilmer was his backup, and his backup was Joe Theismann. And Joe Theismann ended up being a dude that ended up having Washington win their first franchise championship, like we're celebrating today for the Seahawks. Sonny Jurgensen was an icon. And when I first started in his media business, Sonny Jurgensen was still hanging around in Washington. I never had a chance to talk to him about it, but he's an icon. He's an NFL icon. And a lot of young people are not going to know who he is, but David Harrison did something really, really nice. He talked about Sonny Jurgensen, his impact on the Washington franchise, and here it is.
Some sad news Friday morning as we learned of the passing of Hall of Fame quarterback and Washington football legend Sonny Jurgensen at the age of 91. In a statement, the team said, quote, "He was a giant of the game and a beloved part of our team's identity. Our hearts and prayers are with Sonny's family, friends, and everyone who loved him," end quote. By the time Sonny retired from the NFL, he had thrown for over 32,000 yards and 250 touchdowns in an amazing career that actually started with the Philadelphia Eagles before being traded to Washington in 1964. From there, Jurgensen went on to be named to 4 more Pro Bowls, totaling 5 in his career, and made multiple All-Pro teams along the way. He was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1983, and while he will always be remembered as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, his family remembers him as a loving husband, father, and grandfather. In a statement, the family said, quote, "We are enormously proud of his amazing life and accomplishments on the field, but to those of us who knew him beyond the stadium lights, he was the steady, humorous, and deeply loving hearts of our family. We are comforted by the knowledge that he brought joy to so many," end quote. The family asked everyone to join them in raising a glass, sharing a story and a smile, and celebrate the life of number 9, Sonny Jurgensen. He was 91 years old.
91 years is a long time. Sonny Jurgensen, we'll remember you forever here on Locked On NFL. We got to remember the greats that have always contributed to the game on the field. Kevin, you and I don't work on the field, but we do benefit greatly for what those players do. I know you're in the Baltimore area. That's not the DMV. A lot of people say Baltimore. No, it's not. Baltimore is Baltimore. DMV is inside the Beltway. But give me your opinion real quick on that as we sign off here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to remember history. And, there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. But, especially when someone does pass away, the best thing you can do is remember them and keep talking about them, keep speaking of them and remembering what they did for the game. And I think that that's really important. So, here in Baltimore, we've had a lot of former players that tragically passed away recently. Tony Siragusa being a big one, who was a larger than life figure in Baltimore, both on and off the field. And I talked to Kadri Ismail, who was Siragusa's teammate, and we talk really regularly. He's part of the Locked On Ravens squad show with me. And, it always brightens my day to hear Q talk about Tony Siragusa and all the stories, the fun moments they had on and off the field. And it brings them new life, in my opinion. So, again, it's always a tragedy when a great passes away. But I agree. I do my best to remember those guys as much as I can and continue speaking about them to make sure that they're never forgotten.
No doubt about it. Well, you ain't going to forget about us because we'll be right back here tomorrow. Tyler Rowland, who you heard from earlier, he's going to come wake you up like a double shot of espresso on Locked On NFL AM, and he's going to tell you why the Patriots fell short again, and possibly even more than that as we head into free agency. Remember to tap into the Everydayers Club down in the description wherever you get your podcast. We don't take it for granted, man. That's why we sitting up here. It was almost midnight. Kevin Oestrechier and I doing this show. KO and I, we're going to let you go right now, man, but we really, really appreciate you. We do not take it for granted here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We'll see you next time, which will be tomorrow here, twice a day on the Locked On NFL